When midnight.
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 So everybody's asking me, when midnight? I have the answer. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, just kidding. Airdrop's coming sooner than you think. And after that, mainnet.
Oh, what's up, Ada Gang? Welcome into Adapt Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto there. I apologize for the intro, a little bit of a technical difficulty here. I am finally getting back on schedule when it comes to live streaming, but boy, oh boy, do we have a jam-packed show for you guys as a part of today's episode. We're going to be diving into everything a Rare Evo. The countdown is officially on. We're literally looking at the timeline here about 3 to 4 days away before the official dev/governance day, which will be followed by the official event taking place at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas from the 6th through the 10th. If you haven't already purchased your ticket, we're going to be talking about some offers there. And then we're going to talk about everything as it relates to the Midnight Glacier drop. Now, we've seen a lot of teases. One I actually just played there at the very beginning. We heard at the very end from Fahmy Syed, the president of the Midnight Foundation, teasing, right, when midnight. I am of the mindset that there will be a massive announcement at the upcoming Rare Evo event. Again, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs, not only from within the Cardano ecosystem, but even from outside. And if you aren't aware, Midnight is going to be a blockchain agnostic network. So while SPOs from the Cardano ecosystem will provide some initial support there, they do plan, on providing their airdrop for people outside of the ecosystem. So again, I think they're going to strike while the iron is hot. Complete speculation here on my end. But following that discussion, we're also going to talk about Hosky. And I'm actually joined by the creator and sort of the person that's helped to bring this all to life. So we're going to hear a little bit about the lore and what happened, right, to get to where we currently are. And we've just seen the official website for Hosky go live. So we're going to be diving all into that. But before we go any further, my name is Fareed. Hopefully, we've seen each other here before. If we haven't, I am a content creator here focusing on the Cardano and Bitcoin ecosystems. As you're making your way in here for this live stream, please make sure to share this out. If you appreciate this type of content, one of the easiest ways to support me as a creator is just by hitting that like button at the very bottom here. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on X, there should also be a little heart icon. Hit that, retweet that, share this out. It is the best way, to support or to show your support here for a creator like me here on the channel. If you want more, consider subscribing and join the conversation. Again, this is essentially a open floor or an open communication channel here where you'll be able to ask me questions. I can ask you questions. And then as we get trim up here, our very special guest here for today's episode, you'll be able to ask him questions as it relates to the Hosky launch. Again, there's going to be a lot of alpha that they'll be breaking down at the upcoming Rare Evo. So without any further ado, this is someone that I consider a great friend. We've known each other going quite a bit now. He's officially a member at IOG, and I'm excited for everything that he's already done, right? One of the bigger contributions that a lot of people know him for was Hydra on Doom, Doom on Hydra, where they actually just had a conversation and a competition, at Vegas or in Vegas this past January. Again, I'm going to give him the opportunity to sort of introduce himself. But again, very, very close and near and dear to me here. I'm excited to see him at the upcoming Rare Evo event here. Without any further ado, we've got Trim Brusette. Trim.
Hey,
a while, man. How are you?
Yeah,
dude?
it's been a while. It's I don't think I've seen you properly since Vegas. The Hydra Doom tournament. That was a really fun time. It was incredible that you were able to come out on such short notice and help cover that event. It's good to be back. It's we used to do these not regularly, but somewhat more frequently. I'm hoping to get a little bit more back into the game. I've been kind of head down for a while now, figuring out what this thing is with Hosky, and then I think it's time to start opening up the books a little bit and talk about it and kind of invite people in for the next part of the journey, as it were.
Yeah. Again, thank you for taking the time to join us here. I've left the link to your X account down below. I'm not sure if you want to drop any sort of official email. Obviously, you're welcome to do that. If you don't, that's also okay. But I did give the viewers a heads up that if they have any questions for you, especially when it comes to Quantum Hosky, that they can go ahead and drop that in the live chat. For anybody watching as a part of the replay, leave a comment down below. I'll be monitoring those again ahead of Rare Evo and making sure to pass relevant questions over to Trim and team in order to get you guys as much alpha and as much clarity around that as possible. Now, before we
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like if anyone wants to get a hold of me, it's pretty simple. trim.bruset@iohk.io. Couldn't be simpler. So
perfect.
if you have anything, send it my way. I can't guarantee that I'll be responding over the next couple of weeks because it's going to be pretty busy. But I always do read. I clear out my email inbox almost every single day, so it shouldn't be left unread.
Perfect. And thank you. That said, let me just briefly share my screen here. And what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the upcoming Rare Evo event. So for anybody who hasn't attended Rare Evo before, it is a multi-chain event, like I said, taking place here from the 6th through the 10th of this particular month of August here at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. It was a massive event last year. We got to hear from Charles. We got to hear from RFK. We got to hear from you, Trim. I had the pleasure of actually introducing you, right, on a few of the different panels and key pieces there, and got to speak with Pi, Adam Dean, just a lot of the contributors here from within the Cardano ecosystem. This year, we've got in representation IOG, which of course you work for. We've also got the Midnight Network team in the foundation, which would be in attendance. We've got Apex Fusion. We've got World Mobile, the Minutes Network. We've got the Polkadot ecosystem, Solana, the Cardano Foundation, Draper University. We got reps from Coinbase, from Nuvola, Palm. I mean, just so many different contributors here within Cardano and outside of the ecosystem. And so for anybody who isn't aware and that wants to attend, again, you definitely want to make sure to go ahead and purchase your tickets here, but you can head over to the official Rare Evo website, which is available at rareevo.io. I'll leave the link to that as a part of today's video description and also drop that in the replay here or in the chat here in just a moment. From here, you can check out the event, the venue, the agendas. And if you want to purchase a ticket, you can go ahead and do that here. They've got 3 separate tickets. They've got tickets for general admission, which I believe right now are currently on sale for $350. We've also got the VIP, which is roughly about $1,200. And then we've got the whale pass for any of you whales out there that are going to be attending the event, which essentially gives you perks and access to essentially everything at the hotel, which is going for roughly about 10 grand. So I realize, again, not everybody has that kind of fiat to spend. However, I'm sure that they've sold a couple there. That said, let's maybe just pivot a little bit here and talk about who will be in attendance from the Rare Evo team and who's going to be giving a very special guest appearance. Right, so we actually have you, Trim. You'll be speaking with Marcus Vess. Could you maybe break down a little bit about what you guys plan on addressing there as a part of the Quantum Hosky reveal?
Yeah, for sure. I think Rare Evo this year is going to be so big. There's going to be so many things coming out, things being announced, so much content to capture. And even if you're not able to attend the event in person, there's going to be so much stuff you can, watch on the live streams and catch up on later as well. This is going to be an absolutely jam-packed event, and I'm really looking forward to it. From my side, on the Quantum Hosky topic, we're going to be doing a couple of things because it's such a crazy, wacky project that a 25-minute stage presentation just isn't going to cut it for covering everything. So what I'm doing is I'm going to try and split it out a little bit across a couple of different things happening there. So there's the stage presentation where I'm going to talk kind of a little bit about the project and lay out some of the experiments that we've been doing so far. I have a podcast session with Charles where I'm hoping to talk a little bit about the vision of the project, the future, kind of where we're aiming at. I have another podcast session with the CEO of a company called Cortical Labs. They make the dish brain devices, so we're going to get all into that. Marcus, as you can see here, he's joining me for the event, and he has a activation at the booth. So if you're at Rare Evo, swing by the IOG booth. You can have your actual brain waves read on site, and you can kind of see your brain. It's pretty cool. So we have a lot of things, and then I have a couple of surprises here and there planned, with the community. So there's a lot of things happening at Rare, and then I'm hoping to follow up with a couple of things, not immediately after Rare, but pretty shortly after Rare as well, in terms of trying to invite people in to join the journey, as it were. That is, the development of Quantum Hosky, because it's again, you can't adequately sum it up in just a section. Like you really need to get into all of those different rabbit holes. Like there's, it feels like just a recursive Rubik's Cube of rabbit holes, like the whole thing. Like every time you talk about a topic, there's so many tangents, and like there's so many things that you just want to go down into and talk about. And that's the beauty of it. That's what I think is so exciting. So, I'm hoping to really fill out a lot of content after the events, when we can get into all of those rabbit holes and, talk about the 4D stuff, talk about the dish brains, talk about, the quantum beacon, all of these things. We can really do like a deep dive into, and that's what I'm really looking forward to. So a lot of cool things that we're going to show off at Rare, and then a lot of things happening after as well.
And I think more than anybody, you've got a home here, so you are definitely more than welcome to give us a follow-up here. And I'll definitely be making sure to reach out to you to get you back on the channel to help fill in those gaps and to give you the opportunity to talk about all of the minutiae, all the details that you just mentioned there. So again, thank you for joining us as a part of today's show. For the viewers, if you guys have questions, again, get those lined up here. We're going to be diving into everything Quantum Hosky in just a moment. But before we do, I want to quickly highlight again what IOG is going to be putting on ahead of the actual main 2 days at Rare Evo. So I'll leave the link to this down below, but it's available at events.iog.io, where it states decentralized yet united. So the team from IO will be pushing, of course, Web3 innovation. They'll be providing live demos, as Trim has just discussed, and everybody's going to be out there to essentially build connections into network, right? So again, for me, I think there's a lot of value. There's going to be a lot of content coming out for me as a creator here, but I'm looking to expand outside of just Cardano, right? So talking with you, talking with partner chains, talking with the Solana ecosystem, the Hedera ecosystem, and just so many others, and bringing that back and trying to essentially build a bridge, right? Where not only am I bringing my viewers new content about other ecosystems, but also exposing those ecosystems to what we're building here within Cardano. I think there's been sort of a DeFi resurgence here the last couple of months, where a lot of people have sort of woken back up and have been feeling a little bit bullish about everything that's being developed here in this ecosystem. And so we've got a couple of pictures here. Of course, again, this was Trim. I want to say this may have been last year, right? Or was this in Vegas?
Yeah, no, that was last year in at Rare Evo. That was the first time that we showed off Hydra Doom. So I got the little honk T-shirt to commemorate that. And then you can see Charles playing it there. We actually had, for those that weren't able to attend and haven't paid attention or caught up with it, it's we actually got these arcade cabinets made that were super, super nice. So you were able to play Doom where each individual frame was running inside of a Hydra head. So you were kind of like playing Doom on Hydra, as it were. And it was such a blast, that project. It was really, really fun.
Yeah, no, again, I definitely remember that like it was yesterday. It's crazy how quickly time flies in this space, but really looking forward to doing it again this year, and now, right, focusing on Quantum Hosky. So as we get ready to wind this segment down here, we're expecting demos and reveals from the Lace team. We're also expecting demos around Bitcoin DeFi. For anybody who missed it, this was back in Vegas, I believe, back in May, towards the end of the month, where we saw Lace doing a demo integrating with MintSwap and actually using Bitcoin to be able to make a swap on a Cardano based DEX for a Cardano native asset. So a lot of exciting announcements there. We also have the Midnight Foundation, which I'm going to be talking a little bit more about here, will be in attendance there. And like I said at the very beginning, I think that there's going to be a massive announcement coming out of that. So if you're going to be looking to get some of that alpha, make sure to tune in first off to the Rare Evo event, which should be live streamed. I'll see if I can get some of those links and references to share with my community, but I'll also be recapping every single day of the event in terms of highlights there. And as soon as we do get some more information around midnight, I'll make sure to break that down here for my community. So if you are watching here from the DApp Central channel, make sure to subscribe if you want that valuable information. Also make sure to turn on those bell notifications so you're able to be notified as soon as content goes out ASAP. Now, we also have Quantum Hosky here. Again, this is, I think, where you're going to shine, Trim. Really looking forward to hearing some of that alpha here in just a little bit. But talks about quantum computing, dish brains, AI, EEG headsets, and how far we can actually push all of this technology to go, right? And so I know you're going to be sharing a couple of really cool pieces of equipment here with us, so I'm not going to spoil it here. But for anybody who's watching, you will definitely want to make sure to stick around here for this live stream. Now, we're also going to be talking about partner chains. I think Midnight is sort of one of the key leaders there, but keep in mind that other networks, for example, like Cerberus, a risk rating protocol, will be using the partner chain framework. We've also even heard from Nuvola, who's going to be building out their own compute and storage network, will also be using the partner chain framework. So looking forward to hearing more details about that. Now, the team has also left a schedule down here breaking down in terms of I/O what they'll be participating and providing. But in a brief nutshell here, I do want to quickly just recap what we can expect for Gov Day. So on Gov Day, we will be hearing from Charles Hoskinson. There's going to be ongoing conversations about the Cardano budget and the Treasury. This has been a huge topic of contention here. We've just seen, I want to say it's about 39 different withdrawal actions going out to the community to vote for. And I believe IOGs actually was one of the first to pass, in addition to the Midgard teams, who also was able to get their withdrawal proposal passed. So IOG, I want to say, is receiving somewhere around 90 million ADA for their budget proposal. And then we saw the Midgard team receiving a withdrawal approval for roughly around 2 million ADA. Following that, again, a reoccurring theme here. There's going to be a midnight workshop followed by a Cardano Constitution 2.0 workshop, where we're going to talk about, things that maybe we've learned about, things that have gone well so far when it comes to the Constitution, governance, etc., and how we can actually all align moving forward to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. Following that, we've got a little bit more talking about funding Cardano's future, Cardano's Project Catalyst, funding round number 14 actually just kicked off here. So I'm going to have some more dedicated content coming out about that here over the course of the coming days. But then there's always this conversation about marketing and growth of the ecosystem, right? I feel like it's been one point that continuously comes back. And so hopefully you guys are starting to see, like, this particular day here is before the official day one, but there's going to be so many things that you probably want to learn about, or at least hear about, right? That you want to make sure to tune in here. And again, if this isn't live streamed, I'll make sure to get all the highlights and recap that as a part of a separate video. And then of course, again, we've got some more of the tech talk here talking about untyped Plutus or UPLC, and then formal verification. So those are not really my wheelhouse there. I think those are more of Trim's and the developers' wheelhouses, but there's going to be a lot of content for everybody. Go ahead, Trim.
Yeah, no, I think if I understand this correctly, the UPLC to RISC-V, that is, as you mentioned, untyped Plutus lambda calculus, that's UPLC. That's basically when you write smart contracts on Cardano, they compile down to UPLC, and that's what actually gets executed on chain. And RISC-V is basically the same thing, but for executing things on the Bitcoin network, from what I understand. So I believe this might be something covering running Cardano smart contracts on Bitcoin, but I may be getting it the other way around. I'm not entirely sure, but those are at least the this tech language, the UPLC and RISC-V, they relate to those two concepts. And yeah, formal verification, obviously, it's one of the main selling points, I would say, of Cardano and the smart contracts, because that's what you get from doing things like the hardcore research that was put in, and the formal methods and the Haskell and all of this stuff gives you the abilities like formal verification for things, which is one of the reasons why Cardano is so safe compared to a lot of other development models.
Thank you again. I love having you here because of how knowledgeable you are when it comes to the tech side of things. And I think that's essentially why you've done so great at IOG. Now let's pivot in here into the second topic very briefly here, which is the midnight airdrop. And then we're going to dive into everything Quantum Hosky. So we've talked about Rare Evo. And like I mentioned earlier, the midnight team, the foundation, will be in attendance at Rare Evo. I believe they're actually one of the core or gold sponsors. So IOG is a major sponsor, and we also have the Midnight Network or the foundation also as a sponsor. Now we're going to be able to hear directly from Fami's side, who actually was able to host a couple of us content creators back in the month of June. Or excuse me, was was that June or July? It's crazy how quickly time flies now. I want to say it was
Yeah.
actually June. But he brought us out there in New York, and we were able to, meet him. A lot of the core team when it comes to business development, marketing, community engagement from the Midnight Foundation. And so I feel like Fami's essentially a second friend now, and really looking forward to hearing, his presentation and his demo of what they've been building here on the Midnight blockchain at the Rare Evo event. Again, this is going to be massive. In addition, we've got their head of marketing, who is Jason Schober, who will also be there attending Rare Evo. So again, make sure to go ahead, network, reach out to these folks, because sooner or later, I think, we're all going to realize that we are all pushing towards the same goal, which is mass adoption, not just of Cardano, but of blockchain technology. And if Midnight does well, Cardano does well, because of how integrated Cardano SPOs and Cardano node operators are with their business model. And so if you've missed it, they do have a dedicated website, which essentially breaks down the upcoming Midnight Airdrop, aka the Glacier Drop, which, Trim, I know you know all about this. And so maybe, again, I don't want to put you on the hot spot, and I want to actually add a disclaimer here, right? So while Trim is a member and working for IOG, he does not work for the Midnight Network or the Midnight Foundation. This is essentially his own opinion here, everything that we're going to be discussing. And I just want to make sure that people don't conflate the two, right? So if there's anything else that you want to add there in terms of clarity, right, that people don't, misconstrue anything, Trim, feel free to go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually. So before Hydra Doom, I worked for 3/4 of a year, or almost a year, I think, in partner chains, which is the kind of foundation that Midnight was built on. So it's been a while since I worked there, right? So I'm not necessarily all the way up to date on all of my information, and I really recommend people to read the official documentation. They have a great light paper. They just released a lot of content around the Glacier Drop. So, there's a lot of things that are super exciting to get into there. But it's there's a lot of interesting things there. Like the Glacier Drop model in itself, like the core concept being taking this snapshot across multiple ecosystems and just giving away this token. To get people to actually use this thing. Like it's such a novel and refreshing concept in my opinion. Like in the blockchain space, like so many, whenever there's a token, there's always like there's this kind of I don't know. There's this kind of value extraction, but kind of trying to not do that in a way. It's a little bit weird. Like it's this kind of song and dance type thing that people do. And it's sort of enforcing this kind of zero-sum thinking, where it's like, okay, if this network succeeds and this token goes up in value, that is at the cost of this other network and their token. So it's like all the people in this camp are going to like throw shit at these guys, and all the people in this camp are going to throw shit back. And it's like, whereas if you just collaborated, if you had like a common ground, common incentive to do stuff together, then you could be more than twice as good, right? It's when you collaborate, you build not just the sort of added components, but like you actually multiply your value in terms of what you're able to deliver and the services that you're able to provide to people. So I think this is a really refreshing take on this, because like by literally just giving out the token and kind of like let the market figure it out itself, it's a way to bring everyone together to like, okay, maybe there is something here, right? Like maybe there is a reason to engage with, and the service that Midnight provides as well. It's such a staple of it's online privacy, right? And it's a lot of the ethos of blockchain has so far been transparency, like radical transparency, which I think is really important in terms of, especially when it comes to auditability and stuff like this. But there are things that you just by necessity need to have private, and like especially like as a private citizen, like you want your data to be private. Ideally, you want your transaction history to be private. Like you want to be private by default, and then you want the auditability to be public. Like anything that has to do with security, especially when it comes to the monetary management, all of this stuff. Like it's good to have those things public, but for yourself, you should be able to preserve your privacy. And Midnight solves this with, the selective disclosure regime, which is kind of privacy with compliance. It's such a good take on it. I think like it shows that, okay, we're finally adults. It's not like full crypto anarchy. It's not like full privacy. Sanctions be damned, right? Like it's actually kind of taking this topic seriously and getting all of the benefits of blockchain, but knocking down some of the barriers to adoption. And that's what I think is really, really, interesting about the whole Midnight project. Again, I'm not an expert, or I'm not involved with the team on any day-to-day things. So take any sort of details with a grain of salt, and do go and check them out at Rare Evo and ask them about things if you're curious. But there's a lot of interesting things there, and for sure, like even for my own project, we'll maybe get into this a little bit afterwards. Like there's stuff in here that Midnight is doing that I'm for sure looking at. Like there's a lot here that I think in terms of fostering collaboration and stuff, that I think is pretty important, and just the way to go, honestly, and focusing on providing services that are useful for people, and that will bring actual adoption to blockchain. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about, and I assume again, not part of the team, so I don't know, but I assume there's going to be some pretty significant and interesting announcements at Rare Evo as well. There's been a lot of buzz around the Glacier drop. The snapshot was taken a while ago, and then there's things happening. But yeah, it's an exciting time. Like there's a lot of meat on this bone.
I tend to agree. And while you say that you might not be an expert, you sure do sound like one. So again, thank you for taking the time here to join us and to dive into Quantum Hosky. Now, I see a couple of questions coming in from the community, one in particular from Sarah. We're going to get to those in just a moment, guys. Again, we've got to take this nice and slow. There's about to be a lot of alpha that Trim's about to share here with us. And I think you guys are going to be excited when he's able to do that here in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here as it relates to Midnight. And then it's finally time to jump into Quantum Hosky. So for anybody who isn't aware, again, jumping back into sort of the Midnight process here, there's going to be a total of 3 different phases. The first is what's essentially called the Glacier drop, or the claim phase, part number 1. And as Trim mentioned, we've already seen the snapshot take effect. So at this point, there's no reason to sell assets, to shuffle things around. Snapshots have been taken. And there's actually been a recent article that was just released breaking down how many wallets are eligible per blockchain. So guys, keep in mind, 50% of the supply is going straight to the Cardano community. 20% is going to the Bitcoin community. And then we have 30%, which is the remainder, going towards ETH, Solana, XRP, BNB, AVAX, and the Brave, or the BAT community. Now, if you guys want to find out more about this, I'll leave the link to the official Knight paper, which goes into massive details about this entire process here. It's roughly around 45 pages breaking down each single piece of the actual process here when that actually kicks off. So following the claim phase number 1, we're going to have the scavenger mine. Basically, anybody who doesn't come in and actually start their claim process will have the ability to provide value to the Midnight network and be able to essentially claim some of the unclaimed tokens from portion number 1, or from claim phase number 1. And then there's going to be claim phase number 3, essentially the lost and found, where there's going to be an extended period of time for anybody who missed claim phase 1 and potentially 2 to come back and at least get a little bit of what they were allocated for the airdrop. So there's a lot to break down here. For the sake of time, I can't do it all now, but I wanted to at least mention that here when it comes to the different claim phases. The official website is midnight.gd. Now, this recent article here, which again, I can't break it down in too much detail, highlights how many addresses are eligible per chain. So as we can see, we've got roughly 1 million addresses on the Cardano blockchain that will be receiving the Knight token. And I'm going to actually break down why the Knight token is so important with a little bit of a clip here in just a moment. And then we can see that there's over 17 million addresses eligible to claim this from the Bitcoin ecosystem. That's a massive amount of people that are essentially going to be getting exposure, right, to Midnight, which indirectly also impacts the Cardano ecosystem, because in order to claim, they will have to actually create a Cardano wallet. So imagine if we just get, 1 or 2% of the 17 million that comes in to claim and interact with this particular airdrop. That's going to be massive in terms of onboarding and analytics or user metrics for the Cardano ecosystem. I'm super excited about that. And of course, again, we've got the eligible addresses for ETH, Solana, BNB, etc. Again, this is on the official midnight.gd website. If you jump into the news section, this is the latest article that was just released by them. Now, I've got to give a special shout out to somebody that actually may be watching, and that is none other than Stake with Pride. And so Stake with Pride is an SPO here in the ecosystem who's taken the time to give us a little bit of a calculation, right? So for anybody who wants to participate and doesn't know how much of the actual Night token they'll be receiving, he's gone ahead and done a little bit of the math here. So if you hold 1,000 ADA, you'll be receiving 346 of the Night tokens. And we can see that that goes all the way up to 10,000 ADA, 100,000 ADA, and essentially 1 million ADA if you are a whale. So thank you there, Stake with Pride, for all this alpha here. I hope you don't mind me sharing this out here, trying to educate and just essentially bring forth a lot of information to the community as they're preparing for the actual midnight airdrop. Now, why is the actual Night token important? I think this is essentially where I'm going to play this brief clip here, which breaks down the dual token model. And as soon as we wrap this up here, we're diving into everything Quantum Hosky. So without any further ado, let's take a look at this brief video breaking down the Night token.
Introducing the Night token. Night is the native utility token at the center of Midnight's tokenomics. Its primary functions are powering transactions through dust resource generation, driving ecosystem incentives, and enabling the on-chain governance system. Night plays a fundamental role in powering network operations. However, unlike most native tokens, Night is not expended to execute transactions. Instead, Night continually generates dust, the renewable resource used for transaction fees. This happens indefinitely. Whoever holds enough Night can potentially execute transactions at no cost for as long as they hold the tokens. Night is also designed to drive Midnight's system of incentives. Night tokens will be distributed to block producers as reward for securing the network. And Night will be used to support activities that promote ecosystem growth. Finally, Night is expected to enable participation in decentralized on-chain governance when the appropriate mechanisms are built. Night will exist natively both on Cardano and the Midnight mainnet, meaning tokens circulating on either network effectively carry the same functionality and rights. The Night token has a supply of 24 billion tokens, empowering a broad global community to participate and reap the benefits of the network. Learn more about Night and Midnight at midnight.network.
All right. I am super excited. And again, thank everybody for tuning in here. We've now run through Rare Evo, Midnight, which again, I think are going to be huge for the Cardano ecosystem over the course of the next week here. But everyone that's here has tuned in here to listen to you, Trim, talk about Quantum Hosky. Now, I was literally scrolling online yesterday, as I always do, and X moves pretty quickly. And so I ran across a reveal of the Quantum Hosky website. Now, I'll leave the link to it down below as a part of today's video description. I'll also drop it in the live chat here for the viewers as well. But it's available at quantumhosky.iog.io. So we're currently taking a look at it. But before we dive into all of this, Trim, could you maybe give us a little bit of the background about how Quantum Hosky came about, where this is even all going? Because I think there's obviously a huge community, but there was a lot of confusion. People didn't know, like, why is Charles talking about meme coins? Why are we building a game? We'd just love to hear your take and your perspective, knowing how near and dear Hosky is to your heart.
It is such a wild project. I'm not going to go into all of the details today, but I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I might not be able to quite adequately do on stage, because I've talked about this with so many different people, like internally, and some people sort of in private and stuff already. And like what I figured out is it's just impossible to explain this thing in a short period of time. The sort of summary of this thing is it's what we're planning to do, or what we're aiming towards, but there is a disclaimer to be made here. All of the stuff that we're doing is so experimental. It is absolutely wild and wicked technology that just isn't quite fit yet to do all of the things that we're doing. So there's some heavy R&D, bleeding edge technology, and a lot of stuff like that. So there is a very real risk of project failure, right? So, you know, I'm not promising anything is going to come out of this, but what we're aiming towards, at least, is to make a partner chain. So I kind of compare it to the wacky cousin of Midnight in a way, that has so many crazy things attached to the back end and the front end. So the main interface for this thing is going to be a 4-dimensional video game, and you can see some trailer footage there of what 4D gameplay can look like. We're going to have a quantum beacon. And the quantum beacon is the initial idea is to use photon-based quantum computing devices. So I have one here, actually. I have a couple of things that I want to show off a little bit before, a little spoiler before the event. So this thing, it's a photon beam splitter. So what this thing does is it creates random numbers. It's a random number generator. And it uses quantum principles to create true randomness, because usually in like, if you just like type in Python, like, math.random or something like that, usually what you get is what we call pseudo random. It's like, it's random enough, but if you happen to have the same initial conditions, or if you have the same seed that you put into it, you'll get the same numbers every time. They will look random, but they will be predictable in a way. So there's a risk there, especially in terms of cybersecurity. This thing, you're sending photons through a prism, and there's an actual 50-50 chance based on the polarity of the photon, whether or not it passes through the filter, or this prism, or whether or not it bounces off and goes sort of directly up into the thing. So whether or not you're measuring the photon that you're sending out is an exactly 50-50 chance, and it's actually quantum verified true randomness. So that's sort of the initial idea, and depending on when how the technology progresses, because the idea here is really to gain exposure to absolutely revolutionary technology, like the stuff that you can call this the 5 pillars of the 21st century, like the really defining exponential technologies that's going to basically define the following century, and quantum computing is definitely one of them. So this is a way to gain some early exposure and kind of keep up with the quantum computing space by starting with something that exists today, and then following the space as it evolves. And there was this major development from Microsoft recently with Majorana 1, and there's a lot of other labs all over the world that are competing to make quantum computers commercially viable with different types of trade-offs and different designs and everything. So it's a good opportunity to kind of stay tapped into this space, and then be able to kind of like have a platform to adopt and then follow along with those trends. Because once you have an exponential technology wave rolling in, you can either kind of try and catch up later, or you can be like on a surfboard, sort of cruising on the front of it. Quantum Hosky is not quantum. That's the quantum part, right? But there's more parts to that. So I mentioned 5 pillars. The other 5, we're touching 4 of them. So quantum computing, blockchain technology, obviously, because that's where input-output strengths really lies, is in the research space of different blockchain technologies, and like the partner chain angle. There's also an artificial intelligence play. I'm not going to spoil that, because that's one of the cooler things I think is going to be involved with this project, and it's I hope to blow some minds when I do the presentation and then show what we've done with AI. There's also a synthetic biology angle here, and that's the dish brains. So the dish brains, by the way, what you're seeing now on screen is this is footage of some experiments that we've been doing with 4-dimensional video game. So that's going to be part of the main interface to this thing. And the idea here is to like create a game world that is so alien but also so approachable that it kind of forces you to expand your mind a little bit. So you don't currently have any intuition for 4-dimensional space. You have very good intuition about 3-dimensional space because that's, you know, where we live, right? Like if I lift this thing up and I rotate it, I know kind of what it's going to look like when you rotate it. If you do the same thing in 4D, it's going to look very, very different. That's you know, where you see these things kind of shift in and out of reality and stuff. Like that is actually just like regular movements in 4D. So you know, when you're forced to interact with this world and kind of play a game, and you know, go on quests, figure out things, you build stuff, all of this stuff, you're kind of forced to get an intuition for something that you just have no idea what is. And it's such a unique opportunity, and there's so many parts of this project that just like it feels like I was literally made to do this, right? Like 12 years ago, I think is about or thereabouts. At this point, I did my first undergrad, and it was in pure mathematics. And the paper that I wrote was on 4D geometry. I kid you not, like that was what I was really into at the time. And then I expanded into a lot of other areas. But it's one of those things where there you go, it's a 4D cube in a way. So there's a lot of different aspects of this project that I kind of have some exposure to or some knowledge of already, that kind of it feels almost like Charles made a little package and just put it on my doorstep. But the actual origins of this thing is, you know, Charles was thinking about Hosky in the shower and trying to figure out, like, okay, I've been kind of joking around a little bit with this quantum Hosky thing for a while, like what can we actually make it into? And he tried to pull as many of these crazy concepts in together into one package as he could. And what came out was, you know, his idea for quantum Hosky, and that's what I'm trying to the vision that I'm trying to deliver on. So yeah, the fourth of these, you know, 5 pillars. By the way, the fifth one is nanotechnology, but we're not doing any nanotech for this one. I'm sorry to say, but the synthetic biology angle, that is absolutely crazy. We're kind of doing two takes on this. One is actual dish brain devices. So I'm going to be, you know, that is exactly what it sounds like. It's about the size of a toaster, I think. I haven't actually got my hand on it yet, but I'm going to soon. It's a computing device that has a literal petri dish inside. And on the bottom of this petri dish, there's a bunch of electrodes that you can write and read electric activity from. Then in this petri dish, you take human neurons, and there's a bunch of different ways you can actually get these. Like you can harvest them from, you know, like literally your brain or other parts, like motor neurons from arms and stuff. Not the best way to do it because, you know, these things don't grow back that easily. But there are other ways as well. You can use stem cells and then grow those into neurons. So it's much more sort of ethically harvested. And you can get stem cells from, you know, your tummy fat, or you can even take like skin cells, make them into stem cells, and then make those stem cells into neurons. But anyway, you can grow a culture of these things in this dish. And it's kind of like AI, where like you can train this thing to do a bunch of stuff. Like you can send it signals. It will kind of interpret those signals in a kind of a black box manner, right? Like similar to how an LLM does things. And then it will produce an output. And then you can like either penalize it by just sending random noise, or you can reward it by sending, you know, like some harmonious noise. Like the neurons actually like it if you send them like rhythmic stuff. So it's if you send them something that is predictable and rhythmic, like they will kind of love that. So it's like you can kind of Pavlov it almost to do what you want. And there's a lot of, you know, exploration going into this. And that I have a podcast coming up at Rare Evo with the CEO of Cortical Labs. He's, you know, they are the ones that are making these dish brain devices. So I'm going to ask him like all of the questions that I've been dying to ask about this. Like, you know, what's it good for? How does it work? Like all of these things, like we can really dig into that. So I really recommend, you know, tuning into that as well. So you take all of those things, and then the sort of last element is like, okay, so you have brain inside of computer. Now it's time for computer on brain, right? Like, so what I have here is, this is an actual EEG. So what you do with this is, well, I have my headset on now, but what you do is you kind of put it on your head like that, and it has these little sensors on the inside that can actually sense the electrical activity in your brain through your cranium. So it's non-invasive. You just put it on top of your head, and you push the little button to turn it on. And there's a couple of programs that can actually read the output from this. So you'll see a bunch of channels with a bunch of the raw data looks kind of wild. It looks almost like these polygraphs, right? Like when you take like a lie detection test, like you have these lines going over. It looks very much like that. But from that data, you can actually extract a lot of information. You can figure out whether or not you're focused or relaxed. You can kind of get a sense of what kind of mood you're in. There are some, depending on where the sensors are placed, you might even be able to detect motor impulses. So, for example, if you rotate your wrist with this thing on, it will light up in a certain way. And then if you just imagine that you're rotating your wrist, but without actually doing it, the same areas of the brain light up. So for people that are, have different kinds of impairments and might not be able to move around and stuff, it's this brain-computer interface that you can get with these devices. It's actually pretty remarkable what you can do. So that's a whole space of its own, right? Like this brain-computer interfaces, and then there's wearable tech, these smartwatches and things, and Meta is doing a bunch of stuff, with stuff you can put on your wrist that can kind of replace mouse movement, so you may not even need to use mouse stuff. There's so much interesting rabbit holes and tangents that we could go into with every single one of these components, that it's kind of like you can kind of tell how it's difficult to compress all of this into just like a single pitch. And I didn't even touch the AI stuff. So, and all of this is going to be rolled up into this video game that you're going to be able to play. That we're trying to build out. And again, building a 4D game, it's not easy. It is not straightforward. There are absolutely no tools available to do this. You can't just boot into Unreal and then just select 4D as an option, and then you have a basis game and then you can improve that a little bit. Nothing exists for this type of development. There is an open source engine called Engine 4D, which was made to develop a really cool game that if you're interested in 4D games, 4D Golf is probably the best reference there is. And the engine is open source. So that's what we've been experimenting a little bit with. But we've also been doing other experiments, because what Engine 4D does is it gives you a 4D game that is actually pretty accurate to what 4D would actually be, but it's not as flexible. It doesn't have all of the things that we kind of need it to. So we're going to probably have to make our own engine or extend it significantly. We want to add in voxels instead of, meshes, which is a whole challenge space of its own. Voxels, if you imagine Minecraft, it has blocks, right, that go all the way down and all the way up and to either side, and you can destruct the environment, and you kind of it's different from something like Skyrim, for example, right, where you're walking on land, but there's no way for you to dig into the ground or something like that. That's kind of how voxels work, but usually voxels are a lot smaller. They're not as big as in Minecraft. Yeah, exactly. You have some voxels there. So I did actually send you a link to a website that we have, where we have an actual demo of 4-dimensional voxels that you can play around with this one. Yeah, so if you click the little color tag there, and then you can take the rotation rate a little bit further towards the middle. Yeah, there you go. And then take flat shade, pull it all the way up, tick the color box, and then increase the rotation rate a little bit more, just 3/4 or something. There we go. Yeah. So this is a demo of voxels in 4D that is just kind of procedurally generated a static environment and is rotating. So what you're seeing now is an actual 4D environment in the process of being rotated through the 4th dimension, just continuously on a loop. And I can really watch this thing all day because it's so freaking cool. This thing though, it's not a dynamic environment, so you can't like, this isn't like a game thing. Like you can't like jump into this and start playing. But this is closer to the look, I think, of what we're aiming towards than the demo that we had with Engine 4D, like the little video thing that you showed earlier. That looks a lot smoother because it's based on meshes. This is voxels. We're basically doing like a art of the possible, right? So we're showing this thing and then we're showing that thing, and what we're aiming for is actually kind of combined or in the middle or both of them, right? Anyway, there's so much to say about this project, and again, rabbit holes upon rabbit holes, and what I'm really hoping to do is to like invite people along for the journey a little bit, so I can go into each and every one of these rabbit holes and just like talk for an hour and just like absolutely just special interest, like brain dump on whoever's listening, and then kind of like give people a sense of what we're actually playing with. Because when it comes to 4D stuff, like and you're thinking in terms of game development and 4D, like you have to think completely differently. Like moving from 3D to 4D, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm just going to make Call of Duty, but in 4D. That's not how it works. Because when you're playing a game like Call of Duty or, Minecraft or whatever, it's like, okay, you're kind of used to being able to just scan an area. And now you've seen everything that's going on. But in 4D, that's not how it works. Like you need to rotate, you need to like really spend some time to actually get a sense of what's going on around you. So you can't really do the same type of gameplay that you would in a regular 3D game. So you have to like really go back to basics and kind of rethink how you do a lot of things, which is one of the things that I think is really enticing about this project, and why I think it's so fun to invite people along for the journey as well. Because then people can get a sense of like the way that we're thinking and the systems that we're designing to help people out in 4D. Because if you just like plop people in there and all of the controls are weird and everything is like just unfamiliar, it's going to be jarring. It's not going to be fun, right? The goal here is to make something that is actually fun to play and rewarding to play, and kind of allows you to expand your mind a little bit. So it's not just fun for math department professors who's like interested in 4D natively, but like actually something that is fun for people that are curious about an unfamiliar experience, something they've never tried before, and actually get some intuition about this. And maybe some people even go like 4D native, right? They just completely immerse themselves in this world and like enjoy the all of the interactions that you're going to be able to do there. So the real meat and potatoes of this, when things become interesting, is at the moment what I've done is kind of like explain a lot of separate pieces, right? How do these things come together? Well, how's this thing going to look like when it actually comes together? That's when it gets really interesting, right? Because the game is, in a way, the glue that keeps everything together. So the quantum stuff, quantum random number generators. You create a quantum beacon that is just like an absolutely continuous stream of, these verifiably quantum-based true random numbers. So it's almost like a quantum oracle type thing, right? It's such a valuable concept in terms of like, for cybersecurity reasons, for whoever needs something that is actually random, like it's actually important, that it isn't at all predictable what kind of comes out of it. The way that we're thinking about, incorporating the quantum beacon in the game world is that we're going to have this sort of entity in the game that's going to select regions of the game world at random, based on its own random sort of stream, and then regenerate that part of the world, or kind of make it entangled or disentangled, or kind of like you take a section of the game world and you just like absolutely mess everything up. So everything that is put in there that isn't kind of secured from this scrambling event is going to get scrambled. And everything that, all of the resources that were previously spent are now going to be replenished. All of the, what was previously a mountain is now a lake. What was previously a desert is now, a tundra, right? Like, so there's absolutely kind of this randomization of the game world. So it's almost like this type of world event. And I think that can actually lead to some really, really interesting and deep gameplay mechanics that you will not have seen in any game before this. And all of these things come together to make this experience such a formidable one. There's also, the dish brains are going to have a pretty interesting incorporation into this game world. The AI plays a really, really central role along with regular people, and the blockchain part. One thing is, a lot of people have a bad, or Web3 gaming has a pretty bad rep, especially in my opinion, and there's a lot of slop out there. I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities for blockchain applications in here that hasn't been done before. And it's not, oh, we're going to, tokens and whatever. Put that aside for a second. What's the point of a blockchain, right? What can you actually use this thing for? Well, one thing that it's really useful for is it's a source of truth. It's a truth machine, basically. And it's a way to align incentives. So how do you collaborate in such a world? How do you actually try to build, these communities and these sort of, how do you strategize together with other people and other actors in this game? Well, that's what blockchain governance is all about. Coming up with different strategies, kind of figuring out which one among all of the different alternatives that are available do we actually want to pursue, and then through the consensus that you kind of reached with these other actors, that's now the primary goal, right? So that's what we're doing with governance at the moment and how we manage the Cardano treasury. Well, you can do a lot of other things with this as well. And what a video game, if you take the perspective of governance, blockchain governance, what does a video game offer? It offers a simulated environment to prove a lot of these things. Because if you want, let's say that our goal, if this was the goal, to make all of the voting systems of the world run on blockchain, which I personally think that could be a pretty good idea, right? Because then you can have online voting, you can have verify that your vote was counted, that it was counted accurately, that the actual end results weren't fudged, nothing was kind of dropped. You can verify this inclusive accountability principle applied to democracy. But it's pretty high risk, right? For a government or whomever, a country, right? To oh yeah, we're gonna do this completely untested thing and adopt this novel technology, and the cost of failure there is pretty high, right? So what if there is a simulated environment where you can test all of this stuff out with gamers and with different types of artificial intelligence, and you have this game world that it's not accurate to the real world, but it is dynamic, and they're kind of solving the same problems of alignment, of agreement, of dispute resolution, resource management, all of this stuff. And you can try it at scale, right? If you can try this thing with thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people and players and actors, suddenly you're kind of looking at something like at least a municipality or something like that would okay, this is kind of on the scale of what I would be expected to be doing sort of in my region. So, this is kind of a proof of concept. Maybe there's something here, right? So having this simulated environment to do that kind of stuff. And just imagine from the perspective of a social scientist, right? You're a political scientist, or you have different types of things that you want to try out, and you have this sort of simulated society. And you can bootstrap it, you can restart it, you can it's dynamic, it's full of sort of individuals and everything, and you can give them different initial conditions. You can give them different operating models. You can actually do A/B testing of does universal basic income work? I don't know, maybe. Do you want to try? Right? How else do you try? The sort of other options are okay, I need to find a town with few enough people that it kind of we can actually economically feasibly do this thing, but it's still not completely isolated. It's still not like a true experiment. And like, okay, model like a fully economic model is certainly not adequate either, because it's like, okay, if every person has full knowledge and acts 100% rationally, and like you have all of these assumptions that just like, okay, but this isn't real, right? Like this isn't anyone. Like this kind of, you get a model, but it's not a real model. It's not like actually kind of mapping onto reality in any way. This is kind of like a middle ground of this, where you can add a little bit of chaos, you can add a little bit of unpredictability and stuff, but you can still kind of do this not completely consequence free, because especially if like people are playing, then it's actually people playing. But it's not as if you're experimenting with something here, you're going to be absolutely wrecking the inhabitants of an actual town against their will. Like it's a playground where you can actually try and do some of these things. So there's just so much potential in all of these different components that are kind of coming together. And I've kind of intentionally left out, all of the meme stuff, because, there's a lot to be said there. I don't want to, stir the pot too early. What I will say is, remain vigilant out there, right? Like there's a lot of people that are trying to mint, fake tokens, whatever. There's no Quantum Hosky token or anything like that coming out anytime soon. So don't worry, there's no FOMO, stay, don't go and invest in anything, based on any of this, right? Like this is purely a kind of experimental, speculative type thing at the moment, but we're kind of like proving the concept a little bit, and that's some of the proofs is kind of what I'm hoping to show off at Rare Evil, that we've seen kind of some of these drips here and there, the 4D stuff and some of these other things. So what is Quantum Hosky? It's just an absolute, it's catnip for smart people. It's something for everyone, and it's something that you just cannot cover in a 45-second sound bit. Is basically the unfortunate truth when it comes to like trying to draw out content, but it's something. It is something for sure.
And thank you. Just so much to digest, right? And I feel like you did a really good job breaking all of that down. So you talked about sort of each of these components on their own, quantum computing, the EEG headset, you quickly highlighted Dish Brains, and being able to take, something, I guess, from like your mind, put that on the Petri dish, and then allow for that to sort of grow and evolve into its own thing. We've heard about Neuralink and things like that, and obviously AI, which you didn't even really get too much into that, but like taking all of these emerging technologies right now that like people that aren't mathematicians like me have a really hard time understanding, and then merging all of them together, and on top of that doing that on blockchain tech. So like you said at the very beginning, like talk about bleeding and cutting edge, like you guys are pioneers when it comes to all of this. And of course, I don't think there's anybody better than you to be leading this charge. I saw this comment coming in from Thug Nasty, a longtime supporter here on the channel, and he said this, and I'm like, I couldn't agree more. Like you and your brain has to be studied, because the average person doesn't think about these kinds of things, right? But again, I think that's why you have been such a great fit to do something like this. And so I do want to take a quick minute to just briefly highlight some questions here. This question came in here from Bob, and I think you just kind of highlighted it, right? Like as it currently stands, Quantum Hosky in terms of a token, like there's been no airdrops, nothing official, right? So be careful, don't invest in anything. This is essentially a concept. And I love what you said earlier, like you guys are dealing with tech, there's no guarantee that any of this works, or that any of this, like there's just no guarantees in this space at all. And I don't want people to think that, because of what you guys have shown, what you guys have developed, that like this is a sure thing that's going to do X, Y, and Z. Again, we're in an innovative space.
It's not just tech, right? Like it's absolutely groundbreaking tech that almost shouldn't exist yet, right? It's you have the regular sort of high risk part of tech development in general, and then you have the very high risk of, you know, kind of bleeding edge tech, and then you have like 5 of those, right? Like it's so it's so risky, that the whole thing. You know, I think the only way that I can kind of live with it is to laugh a little bit about it, right? Like it's such a interesting thing, and like I you know I don't want to, you know, correct people's assumptions too much, but, you know, like this is very much like Charles's brainchild, right? Like he came up with this incredible concept. I'm just here to digest it and kind of make it a little bit, like, first of all, make it real, but then also make it approachable to people. So the yeah, like the actual mastermind behind this is very much and firmly Charles. So I'm looking forward to, you know, having a discussion with him about the vision and future and everything. But, you know, there was this question also about the token drop, and as you said, that there's not been any token. It's still very much early, you know, discussions, even looking into things like how, if, whether, you know, when, like there's no answers to any of these questions. There is a lot of inspiration to be taken from the Midnight approach to like getting people involved in collaborative. But, you know, apart from that, there's nothing sort of really to be said at this point. Like nothing is guaranteed, nothing is committed, right? So there, please do not speculate or sort of get any ideas out of this that, oh yeah, I should do whatever with whichever token. Like, and also be very aware that, you know, there are scam tokens out there. Those are not official. Please do not touch them in any sort of way. They're not affiliated with the project. So we're gonna, you know, at some point probably crack down on that, because I assume there's going to be a lot of that. So, you know, be safe out there and only listen to the official channels. But yeah, there's very early, but, you know, we're going to come with things in due time. So yeah, that's basically all I can say. I think at this point with respect to the tokens, like there's some utilities planned there for, like, there are places where, you know, like if we're doing a partner chain that needs its own type of token, there are real utilities in there in the mix for that. But it's going to be both similar and different to the Midnight thing. And that's, I think, about as specific as I can be. And it's not because I'm trying to dodge any questions or, like, I don't know, like keep the cards close to my chest. It's like these decisions haven't been made yet, right? Like it's there's a lot of things like lined up on the table that needs to be done, and this is one of them. So that's why I can't be more specific than that.
Thank you for the clarity. I think the community definitely understands. One question that I saw was from Hopper Road, and he was asking about the cost of the equipment, right? So for anybody that, you know, wants to maybe get involved when the time comes, you know, could you maybe break down how much that that random number generator was, the splitter? Could you also maybe break down the cost of the headset? Like, how much does this tech actually cost?
That is a very good question. What I have now, and, you know, this is not indicating that these companies are endorsing us or that we don't have any partnership with them. Like, this is just like tech we picked up on the market that we've used for experimenting with this stuff so far, right? So do with that information what you will, but what I have here is from a company called Quantis. It's one of many products that they have. You know, I'm not guaranteeing any utility for these devices, so, you know, please do not go out and buy these expecting to be able to use it. Like, I don't know if this is the device that we're going to be using. I don't know if this is the way that we're going to be using any device. So, you know, please be, you know, don't go out and do stupid things just because I'm kind of putting things on screen. But yeah, there are actually a couple of different options and products that do this, and I think it's a pretty valuable, like, true randomness. It's one of those things where, because I come from a mathematics background, and once I got into computer science, like, there were a couple of things that just rubbed me the wrong way. Random number generators was one of them, because I actually took I believe a lot of the sort of schemes that give both the hashing functions and the sort of random number generators, a lot of this kind of comes from part of the same core in terms of mathematics. And I actually took a course on that called ergodic theory, and it is kind of about these processes that you can design so that when they're applied multiple times to itself, it kind of gives a pretty uniform randomization in terms of output. So when I came to like the computer science thing, and like oh, you're hearing all this stuff about random numbers, and it's like, well, it's not really random, right? Some of it is pretty good, I must admit. Like some of them are using current hardware state of the device, like sort of electric fluctuations in your CPU and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, this is very, very hard to fudge. But in principle, if you get a compromised hardware device, it's possible to either record that and then use that as a input seed for it to regenerate whatever was made at the time, or you can kind of, because it's predictable, like that's the problem. It looks random, but it is predictable. True randomness looks random and is random. It's unpredictable. That's the key difference between those two, right? Like the true randomness on the one side and then pseudo randomness on the other side. So anyway, that's one device, right? I did that. Yeah, I didn't actually pay for that, so I don't know how much that cost. I don't want to speculate. This thing, however, I did pay for. So this one I know. This is one product of many. There are a range of different consumer EEG devices. This one is called the Crown, from a company called Neurosity. The reason that we picked this one was actually because it has some of these sensors on the top. So like when you put it on, there are a couple of other devices as well. Like if you just go online, you'll find some like that look like headbands, for example. So they have like sensors on your frontal lobe, but they don't have anything on top. And that's where a lot of the motor function and stuff comes from. So this is kind of the cheapest one we found with the sensors placed in the places that we need. There is a significantly more expensive version. It's not from Neurosity, but it's from another company. The model is called Gallia. I think it's around $40,000 or something. So it comes with a VR headset, and it's like just a bunch of these things all over your head. A little bit of overkill. There is a reason to get those, at least from the research and development point of view, because then you can develop algorithms and then you can downscale so that you can use other commercial products later. But for now, this one has been kind of more than enough for what we need for the experiments. This one was $1,500, but I think you're able to actually buy the type of sensors that this thing has. You can buy that on Amazon. They're not super expensive, and you can make even like, I've seen some DIY models that are much, much cheaper. They're obviously a little bit different. Sensor placement, again, plays a very important role. But I have seen some models, prototypes of models, not actually commercially available products, but some prototypes of models that are like these kind of sheets that you just like put on your head, and then you could put a baseball cap on top. So you can actually kind of wear it in your day-to-day. So yeah, like that's kind of the story about these two devices. Again, a lot of things are subject to change, right? But I would be very hard pressed to say that you will need one of these things. You, in all likelihood, won't need one of these things. I can't, never say never, right? But with the designs that I've been thinking about in terms of the game and stuff, like you won't need devices like this. You can just like use whatever you have in terms of computers and stuff to play the game. If indeed we're able to make a 4D multiplayer game, which is pretty pretty hard. So take that caveat as well.
I think this is a good question here that just popped in from Sarah, who's been engaging the entire conversation. So, Sarah, thank you for that. But will any or all portions of this be open source? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
I certainly believe it will be. It's ultimately not my choice to make. I'm very much a sort of open source maxi, right? If you can open source it, why don't you? There are some things where like, okay, like this looked like a solution, but then it turned out that it had a license or like stuff that, it was closed source, or it had like a license that didn't permit us to do the stuff that we wanted to do. So some of those things we've kind of laid behind us, and some stuff we might have to sort of figure out alternative solutions for. But for the most part, I think I don't see any reason why any of this should be closed source, really. But again, not at the end of the day, not my decision to make. I think the engine 4D, which is the one that we've been experimenting with, or one of the engines that we've been experimenting with for the 4D gameplay, is fully open source. It's available in Unity, so if you want to try your hand at 4D gameplay, it's pretty easy to download, set up, and like you have like a default scene that you can play around a little bit in. So check that out. We're still kind of deciding whether or not we expand on that and continue that open source thing, or if we make our own kind of thing, because we need all of the voxels, we need procedural generation, there's a lot of model or stuff that we need to do, and we also need to consider the license, because Unity isn't open source, right? So even though Engine 4D is, the Unity has a certain type of license, so we need to be a little bit careful about that as well, which is, yeah.
I think the next question, which I've seen pop up quite a few times, is when launch or when reveal, right? So could you maybe give us a better idea of a timeline? And of course, all of this is loosely speaking, right? Because again, I don't think that anybody can hold you to this because of how complex it is to just wrap our heads around the concepts, much less the actual development, building, and execution of all of these ideas.
Yeah. So in terms of when, I will maybe refer to what I said during the summit, Hosky summit in Gdansk. It's like somewhere between now and the heat death of the universe, and then like after that, sometime we'll have the Hosky website. So in between there and this first one, like the other one is just way too far off. But the the sort of more serious answer is it's kind of hard to estimate, right? Like I fully expect a lot of setbacks, a lot of complications, a lot of like, oh my god, why doesn't this thing exist? Now we have to go on this adventure to make this thing that just like enables us to do the other thing, right? There's going to be so many of those. So I don't want to commit to anything in terms of timeline at the moment. I have some ideas, but like, yeah, it's again virtually impossible to give any sort of indication. What we are going to be doing though is at Rare Evo, we're going to show this kind of art of the possible, right? Some of these elements that we've been playing around with, kind of how we're planning to pull them together and what we've done with them so far. That's what you can kind of expect at Rare Evo, and then just more kind of details and talk and refinement of what this thing is and the understanding of it.
Thank you. As a brief follow-up, what platforms will this be available on? Will it be available on mobile, desktop, Windows, Linux, etc.?
That's a very good question. Initially I was hoping to do this on Steam, but there are some good reasons not to. Again, it's like the kind of boring stuff, like the licensing issues. But one idea that was aired, that's about as committal as I'll be, was to maybe, make a familiar application, a launcher for this type of thing. So in that case, it should be available basically wherever you're able to interact with the blockchain, basically. But it's way too early to say, but we're looking kind of wide, right? Like we're looking at all of the different options, both in terms of the game engine, in terms of the launcher, in terms of the everything. Like you should see my Miro board. Like it's this big, and like every single section is like completely filled out. And I entertained the idea of maybe like doing a second application for mobile, and but all of this is just like so subject to change, right? Because at the end of the day, the purpose of the game is really to tie all of these other pieces together. So depending on the challenges that we'll meet with those other pieces, and also with the 4D aspect, the game is just like subject to change, right? Because if we get the 4D thing, like we really nail that down and we figure out how to do it, it's going to significantly impact the way that the game works, and the way that you interact with the game world. Because you cannot design a 4D game in the same way that you would design a 3D game. But if we have to compromise in some sort of ways, or whatever, there might be different design decisions in terms of the game, and that might impact the platform that you're going to be able to play it on. So maybe if we have like this type dual app type thing, maybe you can have something on your phone, maybe you can have something on your computer, maybe you can have something in browser. It's a very good, it's a very open question at the moment, right? Like we're still very early days, guys.
No, I tend to agree. And again, thank you for joining me here for such a wonderful breakdown of Quantum Hosky, and what you've been essentially working on as your baby, right, for the past couple of months. So I'm going to take one last question here, and then I'll give you the opportunity to give us some closing thoughts, because again, I don't want to spoil everything here. I know you got a pretty nice panel lined up, and as you mentioned, conversations with Charles, and would love to have you back after those announcements to dive even deeper into this current conversation here. But this is coming in here from D-Not, longtime supporter and viewer here on the channel as well, asking about the actual, name and the integration of Hosky, right? So people know Hosky as the meme coin on Cardano. You've actually got a Hosky. I don't even want to. You've got Hosky behind you, right? You've got the matching glasses on your shirt. You're obviously a meme and a Hosky lover. But, can you break down why Hosky and how this will be involved? And I know Charles has talked about involving other meme coins from other ecosystems, right? And he sort of put this concept out there that, like, this, again, not financial advice, could somehow be tied to people actually receiving, tokens from other networks or other ecosystems, excuse me there, and being able to essentially play and earn rewards at the same time. So I don't want to speculate too much, but could you maybe break down why you guys are incorporating memes, etc.?
So for the way that I see this is, the Hosky community, like the token is one thing, but the interesting thing about Hosky is really the community. It's such a hangout place. It's such a vibe, right? It's if you go to the Hosky Discord, and I think a lot of for now, a lot of info about Quantum Hosky is probably going to be re-announced there. So if you want to keep up with things, I suppose the call to action is join the Hosky Discord, and spam in D general, go there and tag at J Crowbar and spam her a bunch. When you've done that though, the Hosky community is such a I don't know, it's such a gem, I would say, in this space. It's a place where you can always go. There's always people there. It's always just a place to kind of hang out, meet some friends, have a little bit of fun, post some memes, join the most recent spam, do whatever. It's it kind of touches on I feel like this project, like Quantum Hosky, it touches on some really fundamental things. It's not just silliness and games and whatever. It touches on some sort of existential aspects, I would say. One of those existential aspects is, the evolution of tech, and the human's place within that tech, and kind of how it will shape our world, and how we might shape it, right, in turn. The other sort of portion of this is community, right? There is an existential part of sort of modern life, if you will, right? Getting a little bit philosophical here, but a lot of people are experiencing this thing, and especially after the pandemic, this was really hypercharged, where we've kind of lost this hangout culture, right? Where we just go and hang out with your friends in a place. Like there's no kind of goal towards it. You're not like there to buy anything. It's not like, oh, we're meeting at the coffee shop and then everyone has to like buy a $10 cup of coffee. It's more like just hanging out at the corner, whatever, just shooting the breeze, just talking stuff. Like that's one of the things that I think the Hosky community really delivers. It's a place where you can always hang out, and it's kind of a similar thing to what I feel Cardano over coffee is in terms of Twitter Spaces. It's just like a place where you can always go. There's always something happening, and you can just like kind of chill out and see who's there. Strike up a chat for a little bit and just like be human with other humans for a little bit, if that makes sense. And that's one of the things that I think is so valuable about the Hosky project, because the meme thing, like, okay, they are doing this meme coin where it's like, okay, well, what happens if like a meme coin is honest? Like, we can rug at any time where there's no value. Like, I really like the honesty there, but like there is beyond the memes and the jokes, there is a real community there, and there is a real value set, if you will, right? The fact that they do the rug pools where they support single pool stake pool operators, and they created the proof of onboarding cards to help onboard people into Cardano, and the fact that they are the most held tokens in Cardano, like with over 100,000 holders. It's not because of nothing, right? Like it's not that they just like made this token and then kind of just like whatever, we're done. They're actually kind of pushing for these important things, and that's one of the things that I think kind of makes Hosky a kind of worthy place or a worthy project in a way, right? So then, just for clarity, like I didn't actually come up with a name. Charles presented me with the project with a name. Like it's like he gave me an infant, right? Like, here it is. And I'm kind of trying to raise it to become an upstanding citizen, if you will. But the name was there, and I think it really fits. And there is a lot of interesting opportunities in the meme space, I think. But as a representative of the meme space, I do think that Hosky is a pretty good candidate. And yeah, like I don't know, like I should probably give the disclaimer that I have a modest amount of Hosky tokens, right? Like I don't invest in it. It's not a good thing. It is literally like they could rug at any time, and it's not actually a joke. Like they could, right? It's a bit of like on the nose, but it's also very true, because like that's kind of what meme coins can do. And if you go and read their brown paper, I think you'll figure out pretty quickly why that is kind of a perpetual truth. So I don't recommend anyone going out there and buying Hosky token. Like if you join the Hosky Discord, they will give it to you for free. Like there is absolutely no reason and incentive to do so. Like there's no just please don't. This is kind of the takeaway, and this isn't like the reverse psychology trick. Like this is actual legit. Like just actually don't, right? But anyway, like it's like when you want to make something like this, I feel like the project as a whole, and kind of like returning to this meta philosophical thing, like you have these sort of core of the humanity, right? Like the community, the human to human interaction, and the sort of the place for creativity and community and fun and interactions and pranks and new friendships and whatever. Like you have this sort of this core of humanity that I think a lot of people are kind of seeking today, right? And then on the other side, you have this technology component of it's almost feels like it's running away from us in a way, because there's so much innovation, there's so many different frontiers, and all of them are pushing at light speed at all times, right? So it's kind of a way to merge these two worlds, and then in the intersection, that's kind of where Quantum Hosky fits, right? Where it's like you're both getting exposure to all of this technology, and at the core of that, you're kind of bringing the humanity into it, and it's like you're stirring up the waters, and in that, you kind of have this project emerge, as it were. So there's a lot of levels to talk about this, right? This is very sort of, highbrow armchair philosophy type talk, but there's a nugget of truth there, I think. But there's also so many just like pure excitement things about it, with all the different texts and all of the different people and all of the different shenanigans that we're going to be up to. Yeah, it's a project to love. It's a project that I'm genuinely passionate about. So I take that as you will.
I can sense the passion, and again, don't think that anybody could have been better chosen for the job. And so I feel like we've literally, Trim, just sort of scratched the surface. I feel like there's
Yep.
just so many other rabbit holes we could dive into, as you've mentioned, and I can only imagine the number of rabbit holes you've already, sort of taken a look at to get to the point that you guys have gotten now. But I am excited, and as we can see here, the Hosky community showing up in the live chat, supporting one another, just having a good time. And again, that's what you said, right? It's like you're taking all of these sort of serious topics, all of this sort of cutting edge technology, and there has to be a way to bring that together and add a human aspect to it. And that's exactly what Hosky brings to the table. And so I want to thank all the viewers that have tuned in here. I want to thank you for the time that you've made to, break all this information down. And so as we get ready to close things up here, if people want to get in touch with you, want to, maybe give ideas, like, send us home with a way that they can connect with you, but then any sort of closing thoughts that you might have here as we get ready to wind the stream down.
So yeah, well, first of all, I really appreciate, you taking the time. And I think, like doing a live stream of this is just, the way to go, honestly. It's such a dynamic and multifaceted project that it's impossible to cover adequately in any format. So like just having the freedom of flexibility, and especially like taking questions and stuff is a really good, it's the way to do it, in my opinion. I'll do my best on stage. I'll do my best in the podcast booth, but it's going to cover niche aspects or kind of like very shallow depth. So it's good to like give a little bit of more ground to it. So hopefully I can even like, recommend people to go back and watch this in addition to all of these other things if they want to, understand the project better. In order to my handle is there on the screen if you want to follow me on X. I'm pretty available for most things, really. My email, I mentioned it in the beginning, trim.brusset@iohk.io. Sorry, I just was doubting myself there for a second. So reach out if you're interested. I'm pretty approachable. I like to think, at least. If you see me at Rare Evo, just see if I may not have time, and I may have to like, okay, can we talk later? Like, because I have so many things lined up and I have so little time between them. So I can't guarantee that I'll be able to chat with everyone at all times. But at least I'm happy to add you on Telegram as well. Like follow up with the chat later or something like that. So there's a lot of things to grab onto here. What I'm hoping to do is to go into this building in the open thing a little bit more. So far, it's been a lot of experimentation kind of behind closed doors. Like, we've been talking about it, but we haven't really been inviting people in for the journey. I really hope to change that a little bit and add, have a format where I can do things like this more frequently. I can talk about it, like invite people in and like just carve out time for individual components, right? So for example, I have a multiple sort of frames on my mirror board about game design and the game world and mood boards and all this stuff. And there's a lot of philosophy behind that and a lot of reasons and references to go into. So one thing that I'm hoping to do is to set up a maybe weekly or hopefully weekly kind of let's play thing where I literally just like go in and I play some of these reference games that I pulled in, because I probably have 150 references at this point, and I can talk to people on the screen, like, or on the stream, which aspects of the game that I'm looking at and why it's interesting and why it's useful and what I think we can learn from that, because it's such a valuable thing to kind of see happen in action, right? So I love watching people make things. It's one of my sort of favorite pieces of content. So like on YouTube, on Instagram, like I always go and like I watch people make things that are really good at their craft. So like whether it's making a charcoal drawing or a oil painting or a chocolate statue or whatever it is, right? Like just watching people do the process, it kind of like, I don't know, like it's so satisfying. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to bring here as well. Like building in the open so people can kind of like see things as they're going on. But also invite people into the thought process of like, okay, how am I actually thinking about this stuff? Because there's so much depth to, just to take an example, right? 4 dimensions. It's a alien concept. It's very hard to visualize for people. And the controls are going to be pretty unfamiliar because you're very used to, the WASD and mouse type thing. Whereas now you literally need more buttons to push to actually adequately access, all of the different motions that you're able to do in 4D. So there's going to be confusion in terms of the interface, probably, unless we get some really, really good interface done. And there's a lot of experimentation that we need to do there. Another rabbit hole. And then you're in this world where there's so much information that we probably can't even fit everything on screen, right? So you have to like move around in this world where you can't see everything. Like you can imagine a 2D being trying to navigate in 3D by just like rotating, a plane through our space. Like if you have something that is just outside of that plane, like they can't even see it, right? And what if this thing is a predator? What if this thing is another player? What if this thing is the thing you're looking for, right? Like if you're trying to solve a puzzle, you're trying to get from point A to point B. So it can be pretty frustrating, and it can be an isolating experience if we don't do it well, just kind of by default, like this format. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be that in the game. What I'm saying is by this, fundamentally, this is kind of one of the experiences that 4D brings. So the game design, one of the key purposes that you need to, or the key challenges that you need to address is, okay, how do we deal with this sense of isolation? How do we address that? How do we fix that? How do we help the player feel as though they're not only in control, or that, that they're not only able to respond to things, but they're actually able to feel in control. They get a sense of intuition and a sense of mastery. Like you kind of get back on top, right? Like how do you get on this horse, not just under it? And I have so many thoughts about how to do that. So one is like a companion system. And when you want to introduce a companion system, okay, there's different types of companions. I have probably like 58 different references for different types of games with different types of companion systems, where it works, why it's there in some games, why it wouldn't work in this case. Like it's a whole rabbit hole to dig into there, right? So just like playing a couple of games and talking about, the different companion systems in those games would be a really good exercise, and like bring people into the journey, like, to get people into the thinking of the space. So that's just one example of like, one aspect, one rabbit hole that, covers another rabbit hole that, invites you into like, presumably like, multiple hours worth of just talking and sort of thinking out in the open and thinking out loud, right? So that's what I really hope to deliver after Rare Evo as well. Once we get this thing really going and we, the development is getting more in terms of like, okay, now we're pushing towards the main delivery. Now we're kind of a little bit out of just the pure experimentation mode. I really want to do something like that to invite people along for the journey. So I hope that gives a little bit of a teaser of what I'm hope comes up after the event, at the event, and you've seen a couple of things that are already here. I think if you join the Hosky Discord, we're going to do some announcements there. You can probably try and tag me there as well if you have questions. There are some chats that are less spammy than the general. And who knows, maybe some of the other people there have some answers as well. So, yeah, I love this freaking trailer. It looks chaotic, and that is kind of intentional. It's showing off a lot of different aspects that we spent so long trying to get done, because like there's no model building tool for 4D stuff, right? So like we had to make all of this stuff kind of from scratch. And Stan and the Ikigai team, Michael Yagi and Stan, I've been working with them. They're the guys behind Ascent Rivals. They've done an amazing job at this, and they've been just an absolute blast working with. There's another guy as well called Andrew that I've been working with. He's like a 4D SME, or subject matter expert, as it were. So we've been working on the trailer that you see there and the contents of that, and they've been doing an amazing job at it. So huge shout out to those guys. And that's just one section of this project. There's other people that have been doing other things as well that definitely deserve shout outs, but we'll stay here until midnight if we go through the entire list. So I'll keep it at that for now because you showed the trailer, but I'll try and give credit where credit is due, wherever I can.
And I think you are very deserving of a lot of credit here for taking the time to, explain this to me and all the viewers, right, that have been able to tune in here and hopefully find some value. And so, again, I've left your X account down below. I'm going to get your email. I'll leave that as a part of the description for anybody that wants to reach out to you directly. But there's just the very tip of the iceberg here as a part of this introduction. And you talked about sort of, allowing for people to understand where you're getting the motivation and the drive for some of these concepts. And I would love to do that here as well, right? So in the future, if you ever want to just jump into some of these games and talk things out, I'd be more than happy to host here. I think, again, for the viewers, building in public, just like what you said, like you love watching others create. I find that there is a community in Cardano as well that loves to watch you guys build, especially something as intricate and as cutting edge as Quantum Hosky. And so shout out to you. Shout out to everybody that's helped to make this happen so far. I know that this is going to be just the very beginning of something great to come. And I'll definitely be making sure to get in touch and look forward to getting in touch with you at Rare Evo as well. So ladies and gentlemen, we are just at the a little bit over the hour and a half mark here, but a deep dive into Quantum Hosky. We've taken a look at, some of the key concepts here, including AI, EEG technology, talking about quantum computing and how all this ties together, including, right, the meme coin Hosky here. Again, not financial advice. Don't invest, as you clearly heard Trim. A lot of this is still in the works. None of this is guaranteed, and they're still coming up with ideas, as they're developing day in and day out. However, I'll do my best here to keep you guys updated. And if you guys have found this type of content to be helpful, I would appreciate you guys. If you guys could smash that thumbs up on the way out, it is by far one of the easiest ways to support here as a creator. It really helps to get this content out there to expose more people to exactly what we're building here within Cardano, outside of Cardano, on the Midnight Network, on these partner chains, with Hosky being one of them. And if you want more of this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really does mean a lot. Like I mentioned before, if you guys have questions and comments, keep those notifications on when we do go live in future sessions here with Trim breaking down Quantum Hosky. I'll take more of them. And if you're watching as a part of the replay here, feel free to leave a comment down below. Trim, again, thank you for your time. Look forward to seeing you at the upcoming Rare Evo. And that said, we'll catch you all in the next one. Cheers, everybody. Take care.